on July 14, 1897, in Somerby, Leicestershire, the eldest among 7 siblings to an illiterate agricultural laborer and his wife. Their humble abode was a thatched cottage in Staunton, Leicestershire, nestled 4 miles outside of Leicester. Her formal education concluded at the age of 12, after which she ventured into the world of work as a domestic servant. Soon after, she secured a position as a rubber hand at a rubber factory located approximately 5 miles from her home in Leicester. She commuted to work diligently, relying on her trusty bicycle for transportation. In the afternoons, she would often pedal through the villages and hamlets surrounding Little Stretton, running errands or visiting acquaintances. At the tender age of 21, Annie was engaged to be married to Archie Ward, a Royal Navy stoker stationed aboard HMS Diadem, a training ship in Portsmouth. She was noted for her beauty and exemplary character. While Archie was her primary suitor, she also attracted the attention of other admirers, including an officer, whose affections she had mentioned to her mother. Ronald Light was speculated to be this officer, though he refuted such claims in court. Ronald Vivian Light came into the world on October 19, 1885, the offspring of a prosperous civil engineer. His early years were marked by turmoil, including expulsion from Oakham School at the age of 17. Despite this setback, he pursued higher education at the University of Birmingham, graduating as a civil engineer. In May of 1910, Light acquired a distinctively green BSA folding bicycle from Orton Bros in Derby, coinciding with his enrollment in the Buxton-based Territorial Company of the Royal Engineers. With the outbreak of World War I, Light underwent rigorous training before being commissioned as a second lieutenant in February of 1915. However, challenges persisted, leading to his eventual demotion and reassignment as a gunner in the Honorable Artillery Company. His wartime experiences culminated in severe shell shock and partial deafness, necessitating psychiatric treatment upon his return to England. Following a period of recovery at various army hospitals, Light retreated to Leicester to reside with his mother. Accounts suggesting that Wright and Light crossed paths unexpectedly on July 5, 1919, around 6:45 p.m. Wright was cycling towards the village of Golby to visit her uncle, George Measures, when Light encountered her on his own bicycle. According to Light's testimony during the trial, he noticed Wright struggling with her bicycle's loose front wheel and offered assistance, though he lacked the necessary tool. Despite this, he attempted to help her resolve the issue. Upon learning of Wright's destination, Light proposed to accompany her, to which she agreed. They rode together to her uncle's cottage in Golby, where Light waited outside while Wright went inside. Several witnesses observed them together along the way. Wright's uncle later expressed his unease at Light's appearance and behavior, noting that Wright had only just met him that evening and jokingly expressed her intention to evade him. Despite Wright's comments about Light being a stranger, as she left the cottage, Light greeted her with familiarity, suggesting a previous encounter. The pair departed from Measures' cottage around 8:50 p.m. According to Light's account, as they neared the junction beyond Kings Norton, Wright indicated that she would continue alone as her route diverged to the left. Light claimed to have then returned directly to Leicester. Around 30 minutes after Wright and her companion rode away from Measures' cottage, her lifeless body was discovered on Gartree Road by a farmer named Joseph Cowell. She was found next to her bicycle, her face heavily bloodied, showing deep gouges on her cheeks and jaw. Cowell initially thought she had been hit by a motorist, possibly falling from her bicycle and fatally injuring herself. Cowell went to Great Glen to inform Constable Alfred Hall, who then called a doctor from Bilsden, Dr. Williams. They returned to Little Stretton, where Dr. Williams ordered Wright's body be moved to a nearby unoccupied house. At the scene, P.C. Hall found blood smears on a field gate, but no human footprints nearby. However, a dead carrion crow was found in a field close to the gate. Dr. Williams conducted a brief examination by candlelight and agreed with Cowell's initial assessment that Wright had died from a bicycle accident, likely from a combination of blood loss and head injury. Unconvinced, P.C. Hall returned to the scene at 6 a.m. the next day to search for signs of foul play. he discovered a .455 caliber bullet 17 feet from where Wright's body had been, slightly embedded in the ground by a horse's hoofprint. He washed the blood off her face at the unoccupied house and found a single entry wound beneath her left eye. A post-mortem revealed that Wright had been shot once beneath the left eye from a distance of 6 to 7 feet, with the bullet exiting the back of her skull. She was identified as Bella Wright, and an inquest into her death concluded that she had been murdered by a person or persons unknown. Police investigations revealed that no one besides Wright and her riding companion had been near Gartree Road at the time of her death. Several witnesses had seen the companion, providing a detailed description of a man aged between 35 and 40, with a broad face and standing between 5 feet 7 inches and 5 feet 9 inches tall. He was reportedly wearing a gray suit, cap, collar, tie, and black boots. The Chief Constable of Leicestershire Police issued appeals in local and national newspapers for this man to step forward and aid in their investigation, but these appeals yielded no results. Efforts to locate the distinctive green bicycle through checks at premises where bicycles were sold or repaired also proved fruitless. However, on July 10th, a cycle repairman named Harry Cox informed police that he had repaired a bicycle matching the description the previous day. Cox recalled the man mentioning his plans to go for a ride in the country that very day. Light later claimed that he had only learned of Wright's death after reading an article in the Leicester Mercury on July 8th. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he admitted to feeling troubled for some time, but chose not to come forward, fearing it would distress his sick mother. However, in October of 1919, Light retrieved his bicycle from the attic and proceeded to remove the serial numbers from the frame. He then dismantled the bicycle at the Upperton Road Bridge in Leicester, discarding each part into the River Soar, with the exception of the rear wheel, which he had detached earlier. This act was witnessed by a laborer named Samuel Holland on his way to a night shift at a nearby mill. On February 23, 1920, Enoch Whitehouse, while guiding a horse-drawn barge filled with coal along the River Soar, encountered an obstruction when the tow rope of the barge caught on the frame of a green bicycle, pulling it to the surface. Whitehouse promptly notified the authorities, prompting a decision to search the canal. Additional pieces of the bicycle were recovered during this process. Upon examining the bicycle frame, investigators found that while the serial numbers had been filed off from both the frame and the seat lug, and the BSA brand name had been removed from the fork, a faint serial number remained visible on the side of the front fork. Further inquiries at businesses involved in buying, selling, or repairing bicycles revealed that this particular cycle had been purchased by Light 9 years earlier. On March 4, 1920, Light was apprehended at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, where he had recently begun teaching mathematics. He was transported to Leicestershire to face charges for Wright's murder. Initially, Light denied being in or near Golby on July 5th or encountering Wright on that date. He also initially refuted even owning a green bicycle. However, upon learning of the remaining serial number on the fork, he claimed to have sold it years earlier to an individual whose identity he could not recall. Nevertheless, eyewitnesses, including Wright's uncle, identified Light as the person who had been riding alongside her on the evening of her death. Cox also recognized Light as the owner of the green bicycle during a police identity parade. Further suspicion arose when Light's mother's maid, Mary Elizabeth Webb, disclosed that on July 5th, Light had not returned home until 10 p.m., alleging that his bicycle had broken down and he had to push it home. Additionally, Light had disposed of or destroyed all the clothing he had worn that day. On March 19th, additional evidence surfaced in the canal. An army pistol holster positively identified as belonging to Light, and a dozen live .455 caliber bullets, matching the spent bullet found at the crime scene. The trial of Ronald Light commenced in Leicester Castle on June 8, 1920. He appeared before Mr. Justice Horridge and pleaded not guilty. The prosecution team, comprising of Sir Gordon Hewitt, Norman Burkett, and Henry Maddox, presented their case. Light was represented by Sir Edward Marshall Hall. The prosecution argued that, for reasons unknown, Wright had fled from Light approximately a mile west of Golby, panicked, and headed south on a less direct route home. Meanwhile, Light took an alternative route, intending to intercept her. They allege that Light ambushed her at a gate, shooting her once before fleeing the scene. Two young girls, Muriel Nooney, 14, and Valeria Cavan, 12, also testified for the prosecution. They recounted an encounter with Light approximately 3 hours before his encounter with Wright, stating that he had harassed them while they rode their bicycles near the location where Wright's body was later discovered. At his own insistence, and following his barrister's advice, Light chose to testify in his own defense. During his testimony, Light presented himself with eloquence. He openly confessed to lying to the police upon his arrest and essentially corroborated the testimony of the other witnesses, except regarding his possession of the service revolver and Wright's death. He claimed they had parted ways near a junction close to Kings Norton, soon after leaving her uncle's cottage together. Under cross-examination, Light acknowledged that the recovered holster, bullets, and bicycle were his belongings, but asserted that he had disposed of them in panic after reading press reports about Wright's murder. He explained that, as an Army officer, he owned a Webley Scott service revolver, which he left behind when posted overseas and later abandoned at a casualty clearing station in France in 1918. Despite undergoing 5 hours of cross-examination, Light remained consistent in his account, without contradicting himself. While conceding that the prosecution presented substantial circumstantial evidence of Light's proximity to Wright before her death, his barrister, Marshall Hall, emphasized to the jury that Light admitted to the truthfulness of their testimonies. Marshall Hall emphasized the lack of motive for Light to kill Wright, as they were strangers before their chance encounter, and Wright had not been subjected to robbery, assault, or sexual misconduct. Marshall Hall's examination of Light focused mainly on technical matters. He questioned the expert witness on ballistics, Henry Clark, challenging his assertion that the bullet which had killed Wright could have come from a rifle. Marshall Hall argued that a stray shot from a distance by another individual could have been the cause of Wright's death. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty, which was met with applause from many spectators. On July 11, 1919, Wright was laid to rest in the churchyard of St. Mary and All Saints, Stoughton. The ceremony, attended by several hundred mourners, was presided over by the vicar of Stoughton, W.N. Westmore. In his address, he urged all present to contemplate the loss of this poor girl who had been tragically taken from them. Family, friends, neighbors, and colleagues placed wreaths and flowers on her coffin as a final tribute. After his exoneration, Light returned to live with his mother in Leicester, initially leading a somewhat secluded life. For a period, he adopted the alias Leonard Estelle. In December of 1920, he was fined for registering under a false name at a hotel where he was staying with a woman. By 1928, Light had relocated to Lansdowne-on-Sea on the Isle of Sheppey. In 1934, he married a widow, Lillian Lester. Light passed away on May 15, 1975, at the age of 89. His body was cremated at Charing Crematorium near Ashford, where his ashes were scattered in the crematorium's garden of remembrance. He left no biological children, and his stepdaughter only learned of his trial and acquittal after his passing. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to join our community. We upload every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. For more content like this, be sure to check out our other videos on the channel. You can also follow us on our other social media platforms for uploads and updates. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.